Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and the proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. Would like to move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is, we'll ask Jesse Clark, our clerk, to call the roll, please.
Thank you. Mayor Lamstead, are you present?
I am present.
Councillor Armstrong? Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
Same person. I'm present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Braybrook?
Present.
Councillor Cadigan?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Steve Brockbank, Director of Emergency Services.
Present.
Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Ann Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Sarah Dillamarter, Junior Planner.
Present.
Bianca Dragicevic, Legislative Coordinator, Executive Assistant to the CAO.
Present.
And Chastity Robertson, Deputy Treasurer.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services, Clerk is present.
Okay, thank you very much, Jesse. We'll move on to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is a land acknowledgement and a moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nation, which includes Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 2 of our agenda, which is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. If anyone has it, go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yes, on the aqua presentation, I do own a house that is on the water system. So I feel that it may be a potential conflict.
Okay, thank you very much for your declaration. Does anyone else on council have a declaration of pecuniary interest? If so, please say it now or anytime during the meeting prior to discussing anything on the agenda that you have a pecuniary interest in. I am seeing no hands. For Councillor Franzen. Okay, we can move on to item number 3 of our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. I'm sure we've had a chance to peruse our agenda. The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a motion to approve our agenda is circulated, and I have a seconder of Councillor Cadigan. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item number 4 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes. We have item 4.1, which is a regular county council meeting of March the 7th and the statutory public meeting of March 7th. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Braybrook for a mover and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. All in favor to adopt the minutes? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 5, which is committees and boards. We have the minutes from the library, and we have, anyone want to speak to that or make a motion? Motion to receive. Okay, motion and seconded by Councilor or Deputy Mayor Armstrong. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to 5.2, which is liaison reports and county boards and committees. If anyone has anything to report, I see Councillor Franzen. Go ahead.
Yes, I attended the Buckhorn Community Center meeting this morning, and the Ministry of Health wants them to impose a no smoking ban on the entire property. So that would mean that we would have to put signage on the rink, the sports pad.
Okay.
So I told them I'd bring it forward to council. And
okay. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I think that's something we should discuss.
And I think we should probably have to look at some of our own properties. If Buckhorn Community Center has to impose a smoking bans, I believe that our properties would also, we'd follow under the same criteria.
I don't know
And this is under direction of the Ministry of Health.
Okay, well, thank you. I think we may have to get staff to investigate that, if that would be a reasonable thing to ask. Okay, any other reports? Seeing none, we can move on to item 6, which is the statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. So I would entertain a motion to suspend the council meeting in favor of a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. The Councillor Cadigan, mover, and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are in a public meeting. Okay, we can move on to 6.1 of our agenda, which is zoning bylaw amendment 2301. And I believe, I'm not sure who's going to introduce the file. Sarah De La Marta, our junior planner, will introduce the file. My apologies, I didn't have that wrote down.
Thank
Sarah?
you. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw B-2014-070. A notice of public meeting for today's application containing the prescribed information was circulated to all landowners within a 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must send in a written request to either myself or the clerk, and the notice of passing will be mailed to them, setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please note that if a person does not send a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at a public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision. This is a public meeting for file number 23-01 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Mike Mitchell on behalf of the property owners Neil Donald Curry, Gloria Curry, and Donald Curry to fulfill a condition of consent for file number B-04-22. The parcel is located on 6 Foot Bay Road. The consent application resulted in the creation of one new vacant lot with a lot area of 0.41 hectares, or approximately 1 acre, and a frontage of 52 meters or 171 feet on 6 Foot Bay Road. The property is currently zoned rural. The severed parcel, which is subject to the zoning bylaw amendment, does not meet the provisions of the rural zone and is being rezoned to the rural residential zone. The severed lot meets the lot area and frontage requirements of the rural residential zone. The property owners have expressed their intent to develop the lands to contain a single detached residential dwelling in the future. The application was accompanied by an R-plan and site plan of what the applicants intend to develop in the future. The site plan provided appears to conform to the provisions of the rural residential zone as described in the comprehensive zoning bylaw B-2014-070 as amended. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning staff. The report states that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. No comments were received from any of the circulated agencies or neighboring property owners. Further, if any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so that we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Is there anyone from the virtual gallery or the real gallery, which we have people in attendance today for the first time in a couple of years? Thank you very much. Is there anyone other raise a hand? We will go with the virtual people first.
I'm seeing no hands.
We are seeing no hands. Anyone in the gallery? First time I get to say that in 2.5 years. No one in the gallery has any comments or questions. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions regarding this file? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much, Sarah De La Marta, our junior planner, for introducing the file. We can move on to item number 7 of our agenda, which is business arising from, we need to have a motion first to reconvene our regular council meeting. Seeing Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder, all in favor. That motion is carried. We are now back into our regular meeting. We can move on to item number 7 of our agenda, which is business arising from the statutory public meeting. We can move on to item 7.1. Sarah De La Marta, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There was a public meeting held for file number 23-01. At this time, staff are recommending that Council, 1, receives the report from the planning staff, and 2, that Council supports the requested zoning bylaw amendment attached to today's agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions from council? No? Anyone prepared to make a motion? Seeing Councillor Cadigan.
I'll make a motion that we receive the document and we approve the change to the zoning bylaw.
Councillor Rayberg for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. We will move on to item number 8 of our agenda, which is presentations. And we will move to 8.1, which is Richard Stakinga, partner at Baker & Tilley, for our annual reporting. All right, welcome in the real gallery. Thank you very much, Richard, for attending. And you can feel free to go ahead and start your presentation anytime.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here, and as well, pleasure to be in person again too. So that's always nice. So yeah. So what I am presenting today is the presentation format document within your agenda as for the results of the financial statements at the end of 2022 for the municipality. So there are a number of other documents on the agenda, but this document then tries to summarize them all. So and hopefully it aids in expediting the process. So yes.
Okay.
All right. So first off, yeah, the audit was done and completed, and that was evidenced by the great work done by your staff to get this done and done so quickly at the start of the year. And then within the consolidated financial statements, the first document after the management report is our independent auditors report. So that is our report on the financial statements. It's a 2-page auditor's report that is consistent with prior years, which runs through both what was audited and how we developed our opinion, and as well too both management and the auditor's responsibilities, but those all remain consistent with the prior year. So what we've selected here for presentation is what is the important paragraph that, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality of Trent Lakes at the end of December 2022 and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's your standard clean, unqualified auditor's report. A couple things to note here. When it does say consolidated, the numbers we are going to look at in the presentation both include the operations of the municipality and the library board. As well, it is prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So those are the standards you have to follow under the Municipal Act, and they are different than how you set your tax rates and your budget. So we'll try to highlight the significant differences as we go through. So then just to give you a brief update as to just some of the processes that we do in our audit procedures in the next slide. They are listed there. And as well too, we do look at council minutes. We test and we gather information so we can base our auditor's report on. And then keep in mind too that an audit is done on a test basis. We don't look at every transaction because of course we'd have to pretty much be here the whole year with your staff. So I'm not sure if that's an ideal situation for anyone. And then as well too, we do look at all your systems, both how money comes in, being your revenues and your disbursements and your payroll. Look at those items and test those areas. And then as well too, we also test journal entries to determine those items that adjust the numbers that are presented. So on the following slide, the audit is complete pending approval of the financial statements, receipt of the side representation letter, as well as the legal letter, and those the final letter there is in progress. Overall, there were no significant difficulties encountered during the course of our audit, no changes to our plan or disagreements or difficulties with management, and excellent cooperation from management and staff. There there was one item noted when looking at the amortization for various assets this year that it was realized that a couple road sections were being amortized faster than they should have. So therefore, there was a correction made in the current year just to bring those sections back in accordance with the policy. So that we just need to make you aware of that difference. It wasn't material, but it was about $80,000 difference. So that therefore, it has been corrected. It has no impact on your operational surplus or your reserves. So, but we are obligated to present that to you. So next, now we will look at the financial results. So in this presentation, these tables are presented as you might see them within the financial statements, with the more current year being on the left side, whereas the graphs then are presented more so looking for a trend basis, and they go in the opposite direction. So then overall, the financial assets, maybe not a term you're familiar with, but under PSAB, those are items that are either cash or it is expected they will be turned into cash. So you hopefully, well, of course you do have your cash balance there. So when you can see that did increase year over year, mainly due to your increase in reserves, as well as increases in deferred revenue, in development charges and gas tax that you've collected but haven't spent yet. And then as well, you both have your accounts receivable, which is mainly a large portion of that being HST receivable, and your taxes receivable, although up slightly. Your percentage is of the total current levy is 6.6%, up from 6.4% in the prior year, but you're still well below the 10% low risk guidelines set by the province. So you're doing fine there. And keep in mind, for taxes receivable, that total includes both the municipal portion, the county portion, and the school board portion. So therefore, the municipality is the banker, regardless of whether the ratepayer pays their taxes. Every quarter, you're still paying the county and the school board as if they did. So next, then you just see the 5-year trend on your financial assets, and it's consistent with the previous slide. Next, we come to the amounts that you owe to others, your financial liabilities, and your standard trade accounts payable is the first line there. So within that, you will find people who have credits on their tax accounts, who in essence prepaid their taxes, and that's about $270,000 of that total. Accruals for wages and vacation pay, your trade payables, developer deposits, amounts owing to county and school boards. So that all comprised the almost $1.5 million there. Next, we have the deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds. So this is a bit of a unique way for public sector accounting standards, that although you may have received the development charges and the gas tax, get the physical cash in the bank, you don't record them as revenue until you spend it in accordance with those agreements. So under the gas tax, you can only use it for certain things and report on that annually. Same with the development charges. It's intended to be used for certain things. So these amounts then get set here and basically held as a liability until you spend it in accordance with those amounts. The other two amounts presented there are unfunded liabilities that you have to record for financial statement purposes, being the landfill closure liability and the employee future benefits. So these are amounts that are really estimated to be what the cost is. And then, because of course, the liability is recognizing the fact that events have occurred in the past that force you to have to do something. So the landfill was used, all your landfills are closed from accepting waste, but you do have to monitor and see them through to a closure. So that event has already happened. So for PSAB purposes, you have a liability to then in essence, see that through to closure. But for tax rate purposes, you only include in your tax rate budget the amount you think you're going to spend for both the landfill closure and the employee future benefits. So it's a bit of a, for accounting, it's more of a requirement just to meet the PSAB reporting requirements. And that's why you might not see it in your internal statements, and it's just added at the end to present your financial statements in accordance with PSAB. And the following slide gives you the 5-year bar graph of that. Next, we come to the non-financial assets. So as I said earlier, financial assets are the ones you hope to turn into cash. Well, then these are items, the non-financial assets that you own and you hold that you then turn into service. So largest one being tangible capital assets. So those are your all your land, your roads, buildings, whatever, water systems. So therefore, that's the net book value of those costs, and then they are being depreciated. And you normally don't try to sell them and turn them into cash. And most of them you wouldn't do very well on it anyways. But and then as well too, prepaid expenses. So these are items you've paid for that you will use up in the following fiscal period normally. And in your case, it's the majority of that is your insurance premium because it doesn't run on the calendar year. You pay it, and a portion of that I think runs till the end of June. Yes. Yep. And then as well too, you have some inventory of sand and salt at the end of the year that you utilize in the following year for winter control purposes. And then when all is said and done, on a PSAB basis, you have $44 million in accumulated surplus. And then next we come to the consolidated statement of operations. So this then shows your revenues and expenses summarized for PSAB purposes. For the budget for 2022, the actuals for 2022 and 2021. And as you can see there, the third line down, your PSAB annual surplus. You can see there's a surplus each and every year. And in the budget column, of course, when you set your tax rate, you set it so there is no surplus or deficit. So then the items below the $2.3 million are the items that are different between PSAB reporting and tax rate. So the first ones are tangible capital assets and the purchase thereof. You can see there that you have a large variance on your tangible capital asset purchases, and that's the fact the depot project didn't occur in 2022, so that's the major result of the variance there. And then as well, transfers to and from reserves and internal borrowings and repayment of internal debt are not considered PSAB expenses, but you do utilize them to set your tax rates. But as you can see there, at the bottom of all three columns, with transferring in your surpluses to reserves, then you can see there the change in your operating surplus is 0 in all three columns. The following slide then just shows you the composition of your accumulated surplus. And the main thing to gather from this slide is that for good financial health, you always want the orange bar to be bigger than the blue bar. So that means you have more municipal equity than just what's tied up in your tangible capital assets. Next you can see is just a brief 5-year history of your PSAB revenues, expenses, and annual surplus. And in 2019, 2020, I believe you were doing a larger capital project. Was that Beaver Lake Road? So therefore, your revenue will rise because you had more money to do that work, except the cost of that road gets set up and depreciated over time. So that's why your annual surplus went up in those years. And then you can see there, once those assets start being amortized, then of course the expenses will hit later on. The following slide provides you an indication of your revenues on a PSAB basis overall. In total, you can see there that you were slightly under budget. Majority of that is related to parkland and development charges not being used. I believe they were scheduled to be used for the roads depot, and since that project didn't happen, you don't bring in the revenue. You can see overall your the property taxation there. That is just the municipal portion. User charges, that will include landfill fees, planning fees, as well as building department revenues, that being the largest one in there, as well as the aggregate resource recoveries. Things such as that are all within the user charges line. Two, you can see the impact of the increase in interest rates, both on your investment income as well. The following slide then gives you a pie chart of that slide, and yourself, like most area municipalities, property taxation is the largest chunk of the pie. Next, we come along to the expenses. So then these are the expenses presented in a PSAB format, so they do not include capital, but they include amortization. Overall, consistent with your revenue, your expenses are lower than budget. Certain line items, there were a few variances, but like in environmental services, there were some additional costs in both within the in the landfill and recycling areas and in the water areas. And as well too in rec and culture, there was just some additional building maintenance costs within there. Planning and development, the community improvement plan didn't occur as budgeted, so therefore under budget there. And within protection services, that includes fire, your policing contract, cost for building and bylaw, and emergency management. And in that area, fire was under budget. And then on the following slide, it does show you the pie chart of that, and consistent with most area municipalities, transportation services is one of the largest component there. And then the following slide gives you an idea, is just the type of expenses you will see. And consistent with other municipalities, salaries and benefits are the largest component, and that's due to the fact you provide your services with individuals. So that's why that is the highest amount there. There were some areas that were underspent, creating that variance. Contracted services, the largest component in there is your policing contract. And then as well, you have external transfers, items that you pay to other local agencies and donations and things such as that. And then as well, you have your amortization. So that's an estimate based on the remaining life of your assets. And then the following slide gives you the pie chart of that. And then we come to slide 19, being the breakdown of your accumulated surplus. So this then explains why you have a $44 million surplus, but you don't have $44 million in the bank. So, and as you can see, the largest component of your surplus deficit area, of your accumulated surplus, is the surplus deficit area, and majority of that is all tied up in your capital assets. So therefore, you've bought and paid for all these items, and now the undepreciated amount is sitting there, and that's 27 million of your 44 million. And within that number is you're still paying off the internal loan for the fire hall. So the fact that you do have available resources, then you can complete these larger projects over time, but not go out and have to borrow and pay externally, and then internally, in essence, save the spread on rates. So therefore, you're fortunate to capture on that part of it. As I said, the unfunded liabilities, both of them there, annually they are incorporated within your budget, so they get funded every year within your tax rate budget. And then it's the reserve and reserve funds. So these are the amounts of monies that you have set aside to be used in future years. And I believe the depot project will be ideally getting completed and utilizing a large portion of those reserves. And that's why you manage your reserves in a way so that you can continue to operate, acquire, replace capital in accordance with determining your capital plan and looking at your asset management plan. So with the ideal situation being that you can do all the necessary capital work, but still keep your tax rate at a stable increase so that there's no large spikes within your rate. So therefore you can manage it, and then everyone knows a kind of expected almost inflationary increase in that area. So hopefully that is the benefit of utilizing the reserves, or if things happen that are uncontrollable, i.e. a pandemic, you still have resources to draw from that you can utilize so that you don't have to go out and borrow. So therefore, that is a good position to be in. And I guess the one thing I neglected to mention earlier is the fact that the capital there on this page is showing $27 million. That's based on historical costs, less depreciation. So if you went to, let's say, replace this building today, you would spend significantly more than what the net book value is of this building for the accounting purposes. So that's why it's important to always look at your long-term capital plan to make sure that you have the resources to reflect, to do that and annually incorporate that in. And then on a couple slides further ahead, that's just you can see there where of your a little over $2 million in capital additions as to where they went, and majority of that being roads and bridge construction and culverts, as well as within the vehicle line, you have 2 plow trucks within there as well, so that the majority of that piece of the pie. And then as well too, you did some work ongoing at some recreation areas, crosswalks and parking lots for land improvements. So and then as some of the larger items there. And then you can see there the following slide gives you an idea of your amortization in comparison to your additions. You can see there the road work you did in 2020 and being funded partially by a grant. And then in the following slide gives you an idea of just the average useful life of how much has been depreciated and how much hasn't. And then the final slide is just your 5-year trend on your net financial assets. And you can see there you still remain in the black, so which is always an enviable position to be in. So.
Thank you very much, Richard. Does anyone on council have questions of Richard? Seeing none, seeing I go ahead, Deputy.
I would be remiss. Actually, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Great report. Every year I learn something new. I guess it takes a while for me to absorb all of this, particularly under PSAB rules. So I have no questions on the report of the meeting ones. Some years you give us a comparison with other municipalities. So maybe just, and I'm not looking for specifics, but just in general, from your audit of other municipalities, how would you say Trent Lakes is doing, and what kind of shape are we compared to the others?
Yeah, and I guess perhaps the reason why that is no longer included during the pandemic, all the information wasn't available.
It's not a critique. I was just
yeah. Okay, so we're hoping to bring that back in the future, but so hopefully maybe next year. But yeah, I mean, as I said, you're in the low risk range on your taxes receivable, so that's always good. Good position. Your reserves are in a good position. You have no debt, so therefore all the financial indicators are very good for the municipality, and I believe that comes through in the province does give you a summary, and I believe you fit into the low risk range and all of those as well too. So yeah, so I mean, as you know, you do have some large capital projects coming up, so then hopefully you're planning to this stage, then we'll hopefully see all that through and come through smoothly. One thing, as I pointed out at a presentation this morning too, though, of course, when you do get capital grants, keep in mind that normally they only fund you to a certain dollar level. And then once you go over the maximum cost, of course, 100% of the cost is yours. Haven't really seen many projects coming in under budget lately, so keep that in mind. And as well too, I think as well, the financial statements themselves, they are very difficult to understand even for designated accountants. So if you do find them a little confusing, you're in the majority. So don't, yes, so questions are always welcome. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I'm seeing none. I would entertain a motion to receive. Councillor Franzen for a motion. And Councillor Gadigan for a seconder. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Question if I may?
Yes, go
Do we
ahead.
need to approve those?
I thank you, and through you.
Normally, yes.
Yes.
Make the motion to approve.
Okay,
And then
Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. All in favor? Motion to approve as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on. Thank you very much, Richard. That was well done.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to item number 8.2 of our agenda. which
Mr.
is-
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm going to remove myself from the
Okay, yeah,
chamber.
please do. Thank you very much. I'm sure the clerk will make note of that. We will get you when this is through. Thank you very much, Councillor Franz. Okay, thank you very much. Natalie, you can go ahead with your report on the Ontario Clean Water Agency.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors, and municipal staff. My name is Natalie Baker with the Ontario Clean Water Agency, and I have to say that it is wonderful being here in person. I live just down the road, so it's been a little awkward presenting to you when you're here and only 2 minutes away. Today, we also have Brent Martin. I believe he's been brought into the screen as well. He's remote, and he is your Senior Operations Manager. So if you have any tricky questions at the end of this presentation, we're going to pass them over to him. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to begin with an overview of the regulations and reporting background in Ontario and what the requirements are for the water facilities that are owned by the municipality. I will then go over the annual reports that include both Section 11 and Schedule 22 of Regulation 170 and the results for 2022. Next slide, please. So before we dive into the annual reports, I did want to take a step back and just provide a little bit of background information on the Ontario Acts and Regulations here in Ontario. I did present some of this last year. I'm sure you have it memorized, so I'll try to keep it brief. If you can believe it, 30 years ago, there was actually only 2 acts in place to regulate drinking water systems: the Ontario Water Resources Act and the Health Protection and Promotion Act. This was up until Walkerton outbreak happened in 2000, and as a direct result of that incident, the Safe Drinking Water Act was implemented in 2002. From that act, a few regulations were implemented in 2003, the Ontario Regulation 169, which outlines the acceptable drinking water quality for various parameters, such as arsenic, fluoride, lead, and nitrates, and that's actually part of the annual reports that we're going to go through today. Then Regulation 170, which outlines the drinking water system requirements in terms of treatment, chemical water sampling, operational tasks, continuous monitoring equipments, and compliance reporting. So that's also a part of those annual reports that we're going to go through. A very important factor of all drinking water systems is the certified operators who operate them, and that was outlined under Ontario Regulation 128. Along with the regulations, there was also other requirements established for drinking water systems. So the Drinking Water Works Permit, which outlines the terms and conditions for a physical site, and the Municipal Drinking Water License, which outlines the terms and conditions for operating facilities and the authority to do so. So I am going to talk a little bit about that permit to take water and the Municipal Drinking Water License and the rated capacity in the facilities that you own. Ontario Regulation 319 was then implemented in 2008 to capture those smaller drinking water systems, which you actually don't have here in Trent Lake, so we'll skip over that. I've highlighted Ontario Regulation 170 in red here today because that is the one that we are going to focus on for the annual reports. Next slide, please. So there's actually three main reporting requirements outlined in Regulation 170. There's Schedule 16, which is the reporting of any adverse test results. There's Schedule 22, which is known as the summary reports, which summarize the quantity of raw and treated water. And then there's Section 11, also known as the annual reports, that look at the quality of water. So really what we're looking at today are tables and graphs associated with quantity of water, and then we look at the quality of the water that was taken from those systems. Every year, to try to simplify it for you, we combine all this reporting information into one report for each system and provide it to the municipality. Next slide, please. So both Buckhorn Lake Estates and Alpine Village Pirates Glen drinking water systems under Ontario Regulation 170 of the Safe Drinking Water Act are to receive annual inspections by the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. The primary focus of this inspection is to confirm compliance with all of those regulations that I just went over for a background, and conformance with drinking water related policies and guidelines. The ministry utilizes a comprehensive multi-barrier approach in the inspection of water systems that focuses on source water, treatment, distribution, monitoring components, as well as management practices. In 2022, Alpine Village Pirates Glen drinking water system received an inspection rating of 100%, and Buckhorn Lake Estates drinking water system received a rating of 96.02%. Over the past 7 years, Aqua, together with the municipality, has a total of 14 inspections by the MECP, 11 of those receiving 100%, with only 3 falling below that, but still remaining over that 96% rating capacity. Next slide, please. So the reporting requirements for Schedule 22, the summary reports, is to present the latest quantity data, as previously mentioned, and it's broken down into both raw water and treated water categories. So for raw water, the average daily volume, and in this case is groundwater, over the years compared to that permit to take water. The permit to take water outlines the maximum water taking in each individual well, and in some cases, the total amount of water taken. The same comparison is then made for the maximum daily volume. For treated water, the average volume is compared to the municipal drinking water license, and that license outlines the rated capacity for each facility, which is the maximum amount of treated water that the facility is allowed to produce. So for reference, Schedule 22 in each report begins under the title Flows, which is on page 3, if you were going through it. Next slide, please. So this graph here gives a great visual on how Buckhorn Lake Estates drinking water system is performing for rated capacity. We have the average monthly flows along with the maximum monthly flows compared to that municipal drinking water license. And for reference, the rated capacity for Buckhorn is 393 cubic meters per day. So you can see the system is operating well within that rated capacity, with only slight increases to treated water requirements in the summer months. And you will see there was a few peaks in May, July, and October, which do relate to leaks in the system. Which can drive up that maximum amount of volume until that leak is fixed, and you can see that it drops right back down. Next slide. So this graph, once again, for Buckhorn, shows the annual total flow comparison from 2010 all the way up until 2022. You can see that there have been some spikes throughout the years, but the flow has remained fairly consistent with gradual increases in usage over the years. You can see that there are some bigger jumps, 2010, 2017, 2022, and that is related to years with higher number of breaks in the systems, driving up that treated water. So moving on to Alpine Village, and this is on page 5, we have the average monthly volume along with that maximum monthly volume compared to the municipal drinking water license, just like the last one we looked at. For reference, for this facility, the rated capacity for Alpine Village is 458 cubic meters. And as you can see, once again, the system is operating well within the rated capacity. This one with just more slight increases during the summer months when the water usage increases, people with their gardens and such. I don't even have to say next slide. Similar to the graph we looked at for Buckhorn, this one for Alpine Village, showing again the usage from 2010 all the way up until 2022. Flows have been fairly consistent over the years, slight increases during breaks, 2012 and 2021, but we had a bit of a decrease there in 2022. So the Section 11 reports outline any exceedances under Ontario Regulation 169 parameters. So now we have moved on to the quality of water in both systems. We've had a look at quantity and we're going to have a look at the quality. Within this section of the report, you will see the term MAC used often, which is known as the maximum acceptable concentration for each parameter that is tested for. So not only do we have to report any sample over that maximum acceptable concentration, but we do have to report any sample over that half level of the maximum acceptable concentration as well. So Section 11 begins under the title Regulatory Sample Results Summary in each report. So this is page 6 for Alpine Village and page 5 for Buckhorn, and outlines numerous tables for microbiological testing, operational testing, inorganic parameters, organic parameters, and any additional samples that are required by the ministry. I'm not going to go through each line item because I am trying to keep it shorter than the last presentation, and then we would be here all day. But for your sake, in summary, both Buckhorn Estates and Alpine Village drinking water systems had no exceedances over the maximum acceptable concentration for any inorganic or organic parameters in 2022. Now, one thing you probably noticed, and if you didn't, I am going to point it out, are sodium levels in the system. And I'm going to point them out for both of them. So sodium actually doesn't have a maximum acceptable concentration. They have what's known as an aesthetic objective. So this aesthetic objective comes to the taste of the water, and it is set at 200 milligrams per liter. For the sake of any individual who is on a sodium restricted diet, we do have to report any sample that comes in over 20 milligrams per liter, so well below that aesthetic objective. So for this year, Buckhorn did come in, our highest sample was 40.9, so well below the aesthetic objective, but a little bit higher than the limit set by the health unit. And Alpine Village, we did have a test result for 24.8, so just a little bit over that limit. So those are reported to the health unit, and then the health unit takes it from there to report to any doctors, and then the doctors report to any individuals living within those areas on sodium restricted diets. So just wanted to point out that it isn't a maximum acceptable concentration, but it is still something that's reportable for your residents here. Next slide, please. So that today concludes my presentation. We have gone through a little history in terms of the regulations here in Ontario. We've had a look at the annual reports for Section 11 and Schedule 22 and the facility results for both facilities owned by the municipality. If you have any questions, certainly happy to answer them. And if they are difficult, we will bring Brent into the picture here for operational answers.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Does anyone on council have any questions? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy. Mayor Lansett, confused today. You confused me with the counselor, I think. Great report, Natalie. What is lead? Where is lead in these tables? It must have some chemical name that I'm not recognizing. No, I'm looking at my agenda, page 158, and it's listing all of the chemicals in there. But so I don't know what lead looks like.
Lead is, it should be listed exactly as lead, and it's actually in, I believe, higher up in the report. I'd have to bring up the report on my phone here to have a look at it. Brent, okay. I don't know if you want to speak to lead sampling here in the municipality for both systems.
Brent, are you? Thank you. Go ahead, Brent.
Yes. Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. So lead sampling, can't remember exactly, I apologize, but we do lead sampling in the distribution, and there are different requirements for different times. I know one time we had to go out and do like 5 houses, and then the next year we had to do like the distribution hydrants and stuff. But all of our lead results for these systems have been below the MAC and sometimes even below the detectable limit. So it is regularly tested. It's one of those ones where if you have so many results that are low, you don't have to do it as often. So we're not regularly testing it. It's every couple of years, I believe.
Great, thank you. I do see it now it's on page 157 of my agenda, but you're right, there is lead. And I guess the MAC is 10 and our maximum was 0.24. So that's a comforting number. That's the one thing that I can recognize in these long charts. So and obviously it's been in the news a lot, so that's why I asked.
Yeah, and just to add on to that through your worship, in terms of lead, once you get to a certain level, a very low level, they take you from having to report on it and sample it on a regular monthly basis to every couple of years, as Brent mentioned. So if there were levels like old services going into residents' home that had lead in them that we're detecting, or we're getting higher levels of lead, then you would see the reporting on that increase. So it's a good thing to see it at a decreased level.
Great, thank you very much.
I just have one question about this high salt levels. Did that last a long time or was that a short period of time?
Through your worship, I'm going to pass that one off to Brent as well in terms of the sodium.
Yes, I can answer that through you, Mr. Mayor. So sodium levels are long-term. If you see increases in sodium, it's usually over the long term, and any decreases would take a long time to go down. Basically, what you see is what you're going to get for the next couple of years, probably. That's why the sampling requirement is usually once every 5 years for sodium.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone have any other questions? I see Councillor Braber, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks very much, Natalie. As I'm brand new to this sort of thing, it's more of an education for me. So on your chart for the Buckhorn Lake Estates, the bar graph regarding annual total flows. I see it starts at 2010. That's just over 70,000 M3s, we'll call it, and then it sort of levels out in between 2010 and then 2022. There's a rise to just shy of 70,000 M3s. Now I know you mentioned that if there's any rise in flows, it's due to leaks. Would you attribute leaks to that?
Yeah, through your worship, yes, I would contribute leaks to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the main driver for increases in usage. The communities, although they do grow, they are not growing substantially. So you're not seeing a really steep rise in terms of usage. So it would come down to the leaks in the systems.
Okay, to answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Good, good. Okay, any other questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for that report, Natalie, and thank you for answering questions, Brent. Would entertain a motion. See Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to receive.
And for a seconder, we would have Councillor Braybrook. I'll call for the vote. Any other conversation? Sorry. None. Call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. We can go and retrieve Councillor Franzen. Thank you very much for that. I learned a couple things there. It's nice when you do. I hope you took advantage of your break for having a bio break.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to item 8.3 of our agenda now, which is Michael Talker, the partner of Think Design. If you were online, could you unmute yourself and speak to this item, 8.3?
Thank you, Mayor. I assume everybody can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, thank you. So yes, my name is Mike Tucker. I'm a partner with Think Design, and I'm here today to present to you the Trent Lakes Open Spaces Master Plan. Next slide, please. So I have a short presentation. I'm going to provide a brief project introduction. Many of you, of course, were part of the previous presentation in November, I believe it was, but I'll give a brief presentation to those who weren't part of that. I'm then going to outline the plan's recommendations briefly. There are a lot of them, as you can see from the report, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. And I'm going to wrap up the presentation talking about implementation and costs. So of course, at the end of the presentation, I'd be happy to discuss any aspects of the plan and to address any questions you may have. The next slide, please. So the purpose of the project is to build on the 2021 Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. We wanted to realize a municipal-wide connected open space trail network, identify recommended improvements to parks, trails, beaches, and boat launches, and provide a detailed and realistic implementation strategy. Next slide. Now, our work program was organized into 4 phases: background review, stakeholder engagement, draft master plan, and final master plan. However, it is important to note that although we identify these as distinct phases, this was very much an iterative process. So all of these phases really did overlap to some extent. And since we presented last November, we have developed the draft recommendations, and we presented those at an open house in January at the end of phase 3. So we are now here presenting phase 4 and the draft plan for your review and comments. Next slide, please. Now, there are 2 really key considerations with any master plan, and the first being community context and then public input. So I'll start with the community context. And these 4 points listed on this slide were a real key consideration so in shaping the recommendations. So this includes Trent Lake's large geographical area. Similar or related to that, of course, is dispersed settlement pattern. Of course, people are located all throughout the municipality, and we really need to consider that as part of the how we plan parks and specifically trails. The large seasonal population is important, and then finally tourism, both existing tourism and the potential to draw additional tourism to Trent Lakes. Next slide. So the other consideration, of course, was public feedback throughout the process. So community engagement in this project included a number of approaches. We included surveys, online engagement platform. We had a number of stakeholder interviews and the public open house. Now, generally, we found that most people are happy with the parks and beaches, but there is a strong desire for more trails. People would like trails improved from both an active transportation standpoint, more information being shared about trails, and more natural area-based trails. Now, for parks and beaches, people would like to see general updates and improvements to address things like aging infrastructure, more parking, and simply things like more seating. And finally, for water access locations, what we heard was that people would like to see more information provided, where they can get access to the water, so this would be improved signage or just general updates, improvements at specific locations. Next slide. So in the plan, we have identified 85 recommendations, and we've organized those into 7 categories. We've also carefully coded in each recommendation, and we've used this numbering throughout the plan to help link the recommendations to each other, to track the recommendations through costing and also, of course, mapping. So I'm going to take you now through these 7 categories of recommendations. And again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in any of the recommendations. Of course, those are in the plan itself. Next slide. So the first category is just generally overall open space recommendations, and there are 8 of recommendations in this category. And they include several strategies, which generally would occur early in the process to help set the stage for other recommendations. So things like a signage strategy, a land access strategy, a washroom strategy, and an open space promotion strategy. So these are things, a lot of them that could be done by staff or done internally. Other recommendations in this section pertain to improving opportunities and access to trails, recreation, and education related to the Trent Severn waterway and invasive species management. Next slide. Now, the second category are park and beach recommendations, and there are a lot of these. There are 33 recommendations. Things like updated signage at the parks and beaches, accessibility and connectivity improvements, adding infrastructure and facilities to support the use of small watercraft like canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards. Next slide. And the recommendations are then, assigned to specific locations. So we have recommendations related to Adam and Eve Rocks, Odenang Park. Next slide. We also have recommendations specific to Detmans Park, White's Beach, and Cavendish Community Center Park. And next slide. And then finally, Sandy Beach Park, where we provided a whole series of recommendations and improvements. Next slide. The third category are facilities recommendations, and there are only 3 on this plan. So we only really lightly touched on facilities, mainly because this is a parks and trails plan. But where trails relate to facilities, we've identified these recommendations. So the first one being the continued installation of bike racks and repair stations as per the already existing plan. So that should continue, obviously. Designating and creating trailheads at community centers, and adding signage and wayfinding on trails to direct people to other community hubs. Next slide. Category 4 is water access recommendations, and there are 4 of these. The first being to develop a strategy to provide direction on assessing, updating, and enhancing the boat launches and other water access points. We've identified a number of water routes and trailheads at specific lakes, so being Crystal Lake, Mississauga Lake, Pigeon Lake, and Sandy Lake. Third one being exploring opportunities to provide small craft rentals and associated amenities near water routes. And finally, developing boat wash stations as a pilot project. Next slide. Category 5 is the overall trail recommendations, and there are 5 of these recommendations. So the first one being establishing the Trent Lakes Trails Committee as a subcommittee of council, adopting good industry standards for reference of trail design and building. This one, basically, there are a lot of good examples out there for reference, so there's no need, we feel, for Trent Lakes to reinvent the wheel, just adopt some of the other good resources out there. We've identified a number of opportunities or situations where collaboration with the county and Ontario Parks should be investigated. And finally, exploring the feasibility of trail development on a number of industrial sites. So these being your transfer stations and quarries. Next slide. Category 6, trail recommendations. There are 4 of these. These are generally geared towards ensuring that the trails constructed can be monitored and maintained following best practices. And this is an important one, of course. As I'm sure you know, when you build something new, then you've got to maintain it as well. So this is just a reminder of that budget has to be set aside for supporting those new recommended trails, and then there's a number of other opportunities to include the public and into helping with that initiative. And then next slide. The last category being new trails. So we proposed 23 new trails, which have 28 specific recommendations. And the intent of these proposed trails is to create that multi-use, municipal-wide trail network. And so this would consist of various trail types and trails of different lengths. And so the plan is looking at using existing trails whenever possible. And in some instances, we've recommended an on-road section in the short term and then transitioning to an off-road network whenever possible. Next slide. Now in the plan, we have provided a series of mapping to identify proposed routes. These are fairly high level at the master planning level, just basically because a lot of the work required would involve on the ground investigation, detailed mapping, that sort of thing. But the master plan, the intent of a master plan, of course, is to identify these projects, put them into a timeline, and then begin the process of doing the finer detailed work and involving the community in that process of determining the exact type of trail, routing and establishing confirming a budget. Next slide. Actually, next slide again, please. So implementation considerations. So this is detailed in section 5 of the plan and focuses on how to approach implementing these 85 recommendations. So, and it's important to note that while we are giving a recommended rollout of projects, this really needs to be considered a living document, which means really that the when and how the recommendations are implemented might change and should not be considered set in stone. However, we have set a recommended rollout, and we've considered a number of factors in that rollout. So one of them being the community's priorities based on what we heard through community consultation, things like balancing spending each year, and of course, available staff resources. We've also considered dependencies between recommendations. There are some recommendations that, of course, should happen first. They would set the groundwork for other projects or recommendations. And there also might be potential efficiencies that could be realized by grouping certain recommendations together. We've also considered which recommendations should be considered operational costs and which ones would be capital costs. And we have provided detailed costing to staff. So the really detailed stuff is not necessarily included in this master plan. And we recommend doing that because it can get into problems when you're getting to the point where you want to tender a project out, and when they see detailed costing, and it may not, of course, align with the eventual alignment, or certain assumptions may have changed. So, but we have provided that for staff. We've also considered identifying hard versus soft costs, a percentage of the total cost to cover internal administrative fees and costs, and then applied a contingency as well. Next slide, thank you. This table is taken from page 108 of the master plan, and it shows the proposed cost distribution of recommendations by period. So we've organized recommendations into immediate, being year 1, which we assume would be next year, 2024. Short term, years 2 and 3, medium, years 4 to 7, long, years 8 to 10, and then beyond 10 years. And the beyond 10 years category accounts for, of course, 60% of the cost anyway of the recommendations. There are a lot of recommendations that we feel are probably just not feasible within the 10-year timeframe of this plan. But it is assumed that this master plan, like any master plan, should be reviewed and updated, regularly. So at the 10-year period, any recommendations not implemented, or if there's new initiatives identified, they would then be reforecasted, and it would be determined then at when they would happen. And then, so important to note that with any master plan, of course, council in consultation with staff would determine if, when, and how any of the recommendations identified here in the plan would be implemented. So you're not bound by a master plan, of course. It's a high-level document. It gives you direction, but the priorities might change during the tenure of the plan. And new opportunities often do arise, and things may get advanced that were not originally anticipated. Of course, when you have a master plan, it gives you the opportunity to go after upper levels of government funding. And if you were to suddenly get some funding for a project, you would likely want to advance that if it made sense, and to implement that sooner. So those are things, of course, that can't be anticipated at this point in a plan, but you should feel comfortable by moving things up in the priority sequence. Next, final slide. Thank you. So if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer those now.
Awesome. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Anyone on council have any questions? I'm seeing Councillor Braver. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. It's not a question. It's more of a comment. Did you want me to keep that until the end?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead now. Thanks very much, Michael, for all your work you and your staff did on this Open Spaces Master Plan. It's a fantastic reference document, and on the heels of your comments today, I was happy to hear that you alluded to, that this document or the plan is a fluid document and could be subject to change in the future. An important point the report highlights is when the plan provides the roadmap for implementation by highlighting key elements and considerations. Council and staff will ultimately decide if, when, and how any of these projects move forward with input from our constituents. I know I just regurgitated what you just said, but I know there are concerns as to how any of these projects will be implemented and who will be responsible for the implementation plan. There's also a concern that in order to establish which project will be considered, much work and research has to be done to identify a viable project, factoring in logistics and costs, and who would be doing this research. And I know our staff, I mean, it's not like they're waiting for work to do. They have so much on their plate. So I think there has been suggestions made, and I agree with these suggestions that a working group be established to do basically the legwork, and that working group would be consisting of subject matter experts and whatnot, and they would do the bulk of the work and then bring a finished product as to what viable projects could be moved forward, and that obviously would be under the subject of council's approval with staff's input. So those are my thoughts. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Braybrooke. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. Mayor Lemon, I think this is in support of what Councilor Braybrooke has just said. I think this is a tremendous plan, and thank you very much, Michael, for this. We now have a terrific comprehensive inventory of everything within the municipality, which is great to have. In my view, what we've been given is a buffet of options. So 85 is too many, 23 trails is too many. I think if we created one trail a year for the next 4 years, we call that a success. So I think in line with what Councilor Braybrooke has said, we need a way to get from this 85 recommendation report plan to something that's doable in chunks over the next at least 4 years. So what can we accomplish during this term? How we get from your report to that implementation plan short term, I'm not entirely sure, although, is it just staff that prepares that? To Councilor Braybrooke's point, that's a lot of work and maybe too much. So maybe a working group is the best way to accelerate that process. If we go that route, I'd like to see them given a short time frame so that we can have something to work with by the time we get to budget discussions, probably October, November. So something within that time frame that really presents us with the vital cue. What can we, it's the old SMART process. What can we do with the limited funds that will make the biggest impact and be most noticeable for our residents? So I think I'm in support of what Councilor Braybrooke is saying. I'm not sure the composition of that working group, and perhaps that's a next step. We might ask staff to prepare some options for us. But I think I'm agreeing that that's probably the most expeditious way to move what we have to an actual plan of what we can do over the next 4 years.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead, Councilor Franzen.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you, I think this was a good report. I agree with a working group. I would hope that we would direct staff after we receive this report to set up the criteria for and recommendations for a working group and bring that back to council in a month.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? I do have one comment myself. I think it is important that we do utilize some of the expertise that we have in our community. To throw something like this at our staff would be overwhelming with their already overwhelming workload coming into their very near future. So I think a working group is a great idea to move some of the items on this list to a prioritized list, and I think that we can knock them off pretty quickly. Thank you very much for your report, Michael. That was fantastic, and we do appreciate all the efforts that your group has put into this. Thank you to Think Design. Okay, any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I may be willing to make a motion to receive the report as presented.
We have a motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will, yes, go ahead. We have a question from our clerk.
Thank you, through you. I believe we would also be looking for Trent, or for council to approve the Trent Lakes Open Spaces Master Plan. And I don't know if we're at that point yet, but I just wanted to throw it out there as a consideration.
I have no problem approving the report.
Okay, we have that as a motion, and I was getting a seconder, or did I get a seconder?
You did.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Cadigan was a seconder. Any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a further motion.
Go ahead.
That we direct staff to set up a criteria for an open spaces working group and to report back to council in their second meeting in April.
Okay, I have that as a question from our clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamsad, just a couple points of clarification. When we are discussing working group in the committee and board policy, that's defined as something council and staff only, I believe. We're thinking something ad hoc with a specific mandate and timeline, and would include members of the public as well as the, is that, am I understanding correctly?
Ad hoc would, I would support an ad hoc committee then.
And sorry,
Thank you, Jesse.
and sorry, there also is no second meeting in April. So the next council meeting after April 4th is May something. May 2nd.
I'll amend that to May 2nd meeting.
Okay, and I'm still looking for a seconder, and I think I had it in Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Okay, any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much for that motion, Councillor Franzen. Okay, we can move on to, even though I can hardly see it because of the amount of scribble on my agenda, item number 9 on our agenda, which is delegations, and we have none. We can move ahead to staff reports, which is item number 10 on our agenda, which is 10.1 is Public Works. Evan Grieger, our Director of Public Works, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lansad, through you, Mayor, to members of council. Before you today is a report regarding the 49 depot sand storage comparison. Just before I get too much detail, I just want to sort of reflect, with the sun shining out there today, it's sort of a sign that maybe winter is actually coming to an end. And I just want to speak to my incredible team that I have, the Public Works team, my operators, my laborers, my foremen. They do an absolutely incredible job addressing the snowstorms, getting out there, going out on not very fun times, going out in the middle of snowstorms, driving to work in the middle of snowstorms on roads that aren't plowed. And I think when I talk to the guys, they really do enjoy working for this municipality. I think one of the big reasons is that they feel supported by the staff here, but also by council. So we really appreciate all you guys. I know you guys send your emails and stuff like that, so we really appreciate those. I pass all those emails along to my guys, so they see that, and it's really nice to know that when you're out there at 4 o'clock in the morning and it's snowing and you can't see 10 feet in front of you, that the people sleeping in their beds that do actually appreciate what you're doing. And it's just important, I think, for employee retention is to continue to support staff, because if staff don't feel supported, I think that's like that in any job. Unfortunately, they will look for other places to go. And unfortunately, right now we are an employee market. So if staff aren't happy, then they'll look for other places, and places are hiring. So just wanted to say a thank you to all my wonderful Public Works staff. So before you today is a 49 depot sand storage comparison. So this report came out of the the community grant budget meeting on January 23rd. So with the new depot being built at the 49 site, it was identified that the 2 existing sand domes there are at the end of their useful life. Important to highlight that they're actually called Fitzpatrick domes. So they are old style domes built in 1970s by the MTO. These domes unfortunately actually weren't built directly to code. As many know, back in the day, the codes weren't as tight. So one of the big things that they don't have is an actual, the roof structure is not adhered to the actual frame structure of the roof. So interesting to highlight the two domes. There's the county domes out in Durrell. One of the domes was lost in last year's Draco storm, and actually that dome was a Fitzgerald dome. So just sort of highlights, the importance of replacing these older assets. So with that, I went into the industry and I sort of reached out to my other directors and supervisors out there, sort of said, hey, what do you guys use for your storage? I did some research, reached out to a couple companies, and they sort of came back with a wide array. Sort of the big recommendation was to ensure that it's a solid structure that lasts the life cycle of your building that you're building. We had discussions. One of the first ones that came up because of the low cost was a fabric structure. And I had some direct conversations with some supervisors that have hands-on experience with those structures. And while the initial capital cost is lower, they were finding after the 2-year warranty that they were repairing it at least once a year, the fabric itself, and then over the lifespan of that whole structure, they would have had to replace that fabric multiple times. When looking at a structure such as a steel-clad building, you wouldn't replace the roof ever, unless there's obviously damages to it, or if it's an asphalt roof, they give typically 25 to 30 years lifespan on the asphalt shingles. So we sort of thought just the way Public Works is operating and just how we want to ensure that we have structures that are reliable to us, we didn't investigate the fabric structure further. So the structures that we compared were the dome, and then the conventional building and the VP store dome. The personal preference initially was the VP store dome. This is a newer technology, and like any new technology, you always want to try it out. But I really appreciate council's dialogue and forcing me to go and investigate it further to ensure that it is actually the best option for the municipality. So when I did some further digging, I found there was quite a price discrepancy between the sand dome and the store dome. The sand dome can provide the same type of storage. One of the drawbacks of the sand dome is you're only storing one material. The store dome, you could store multiple. However, with the price discrepancy, you would very easily be able to cover off that cost difference to build a very small salt shed. And that salt shed would be intended to be the same size as what we have currently at Buckhorn, which is about a 100-ton salt shed. And that just allows this staff for when we have certain freezing rain events or scenarios when we require a higher salt content in our sand salt mix, and we can use that salt. And there are some locations that do receive straight salt within the municipality. So I determined that I feel the best course of action would be moving forward with a sand dome with a separate salt storage building. I believe that this will not only give us the building that we need, the durability that we need, but also provide us with staff with just sort of, hey, we're providing you with a good building. We want to do this right. We don't want to be going back and repairing things multiple times. As well as with climate change, it's the reality of the world. We're getting more and more intense windstorms. So to put a building that could be damaged in a windstorm, I feel that wouldn't be best practice for the municipality. So the recommendation that I have before you today is to proceed with the sand dome. The details of tendering and this would be done when we go to tender the 49 depot itself. This is more just to give direction that this is sort of where council would like to proceed with the building.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan. Anybody have any questions of Evan? Okay, go ahead, Councilor Brands.
Just curious, Evan, what would the salt dome cost us?
So the
smaller structure.
Oh, the salt shed?
The salt shed.
The salt shed would be probably in the range of $50,000.
Okay.
It would be very, very low cost. And it's basically, whether it's a poured concrete foundation or you can use the concrete blocks with a timber frame on top sort of thing. It's the biggest thing is just to get the salt out of the weather, because as soon as it turns wet, it turns into concrete.
So would you like to tender that at the same time as?
That would be the intention. And the intention through you, Mayor, I said to Councillor Franzen, the intention of doing the sand dome and the building at the same time is that you would find some cost savings just with having the contractor on site. So any base prep you could do with the prep of the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Braber.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Thanks very much, Evan. I appreciate it. Just a question as to, on your report, you mentioned the financial implications, approximately $1 million to the 2024 capital budget, but yet in the sand dome, I know it's structure only, it's $440,000. Am I missing? Where's the excess? I guess 500 something thousand.
Absolutely. Through you, Mayor Lim, said to Councillor Braybrook. So last year we actually had that $1 million included in the budget for the sand dome. So that's where that number came from. We didn't include it in this year's budget. But it's just that was the number we had in last year's budget. So we just had it in that budget. It would obviously be adjusted accordingly because it would be a 2024 budget. So we would have a better idea of what we actually need to budget. But it was just it was basically a round number that we used last year to, because we knew in the range of what we were looking, so it was just put in there. And then due to knowing we weren't building it this year, we didn't include it in this year's budget.
Right. So would I be correct in assuming that there'd be 440,000 plus the 50,000 for the salt storage, plus any unforeseen costs? So we could be looking at 600,000 maximum, as opposed to $1 million.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions? I'm seeing none. Any comments? Anybody prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Braber.
Just a comment, Evan, we appreciate your clarification as to the comparisons and the additional research that you did to determine what structure would be most suitable and cost effective to service the residents of our municipality. So we appreciate that. I appreciate it, and I know that my constituents appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Okay, does anyone prepare to make a motion? See Councillor Franzen.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendations from our staff.
And the second part of that motion could be to direct staff to proceed with this item.
Yeah.
Okay. Is recommended. Okay, we have a motion. I have a Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Evan. Okay, we can move on to 10.2 of our agenda, which is recreation and facilities. 10.21, Dylan, would you, the Director of Recreation and Facilities, would like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Council, and through you, Mayor. Before you have a report on the Deer Bay Hall, a small community center on Deer Bay School Road. The facility is currently gone unused for the past, probably going on 4 years now. The former tenants were the Trent Lakes Outreach Center. They've been moved to a more secure location at the Lakehurst Hall. So currently, Council has the decisions to make on what the future use of the building will be, if any. So this report outlines a bit of a process and some considerations for moving forward with it. Staff are recommending that a public consultation period allows the public to submit any uses that they wish to request of council of the facility. There has been some kind of ad hoc discussion over the last few months about potential uses, and this provides an opportunity to present a formal request for it. And then once, if a suitable request can be found, a cost benefit analysis can be done by council during the 2024 budget deliberations to determine if it is to be in the municipality's best interest to renovate this building, and to what extent those renovations would include, and receive some updated costing and some concept plans for that. And if no suitable option would be found, the property would be severed from the road, since the road is currently maintained summer and winter, and there is a resident on Deer Bay School Road, which is part of the parcel right now. The road would have to be severed off. A survey had been done of the property in years prior, so it might just be a case of renewing that and getting the severance process underway if council determined that they wanted to dispose of the property, and the funds would be put towards the Park Reserve Fund for future projects. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dylan. Does council have any questions? Councilor Franzen, go ahead.
Just one question, Dylan. Is there any way that we could get a heritage designation on that building?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not entirely familiar with the heritage designation on that. I would maybe have to inquire with our planning department. I believe that's normally a planning function to accept those designations. And in speaking with Derek and preparing this report, we don't have any current heritage designations in the municipality. So that's something we would have to get back to council on.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Adele Arbor might want to speak to that. I think it's part of her bailiwick.
Thank you.
Adele.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the municipality doesn't have any buildings that are designated or any cultural landscapes. In order to do so, there are regulations under the Heritage Act, and a committee would have to be formed. We'd have to have somebody do some research to ensure that it is a heritage building meeting certain criteria. So I think if that's council's direction, the first step would be organizing some sort of heritage committee to look after these requests. And I know in the 5 years that I've been here, I've had a number of requests, people wanting to designate buildings in the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele. Any other? Oh, I'm seeing many hands. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Limson. Just a further question, Adele, and I'm not clear on the details, but my understanding, I think it's under Bill 23, is that there is now a shortened time frame around which a building can be on your potential list, and then it has to be designated as a heritage building within a year or 2 years or something like that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. There has been a number of changes through those bills, and the timelines have changed. And the municipality, if they want to be designating any buildings, has to have an inventory of buildings that may be designated. So if someone wanted to demolish a building and it's on that list, there's certain protection that it has, but council would have to do the designations rather quickly if someone is looking at demolishing a building. So first step is forming a heritage committee to look at the heritage assets that the municipality would have.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Councilor Braber, go ahead.
It's a question / comment on the heels of Councilor Franzen's comments. I don't know, is there, and I think you answered it with your one comment, Adele, as far as there's restrictions if it was to be designated a heritage building. And a municipality sometime down the road wanted to dispose of the property, demolish it, and or sell the property. What sort of restrictions would be placed on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there would be some restrictions placed on a demolition. However, there are certain rules and procedures that you could upgrade the building and do some renovations to a heritage building. And if council so likes, I could bring forward a report in terms of this, if this is the direction that council may wish to go, what's involved and some of the steps involved, and some heritage consultant that would be required in order to determine the value, heritage value of a particular building. So you need someone to provide a report to council to support why it would be a heritage building. And then council would go through the procedure in designating a building. But I'd be happy to bring forward an information report for council's consideration.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Braber, one more time.
I guess I'm just concerned that we're I guess trying to designate a building that we haven't really decided what we want to do with it as a heritage building. Personally, I think as far as the building, decide what we want to do with the building, whether it's keep it, dispose of it, sell it, upgrade it, and bring it up to code. And then you allow whichever group decides to use it, let them use it, and then decide on whether we want to visit the the designation of a heritage building. So those are my
Okay,
thoughts.
and I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Lamside. I'm inclined to support the recommendation that Dylan has put forward. One of the public inputs might be that they would like to proceed to designate as a heritage building. One might be that they want to use it as a historical building or a museum or a community building, whatever. So I think we're getting the cart before the horse here. I think we should proceed with letting the public provide input to us on how they think the facility might be used. My further suggestion, though, Dylan, would be that we put together a little bit of a template as to what that public input would look like. Because we really don't want a one-line email saying, I think it should be a museum, because that's kind of useless and we can't do much with it. So I think we need a template that says, well, what's your idea? Who would benefit from it? What are the steps to bring it to that level? So just details, not research, but just some details around their vision of what it would be used for. And so forth, so that then we could have something to consider going forward. Not giving you much direction, Dylan, but I think you know what I mean in terms of putting together a template or a series of questions, much like we do with our grant applications.
Through you, Terry.
Who would do it? Who would maintain it? Who would benefit? How many people would benefit? So that at least we have some thought out ideas that we can consider.
Okay, Dylan, do you have that on your?
Yep, through you, Terry. Thanks, Carol. I do understand what you're saying there. We'll put together a template that kind of gives council a systematic way of assessing each of the public inputs for their consideration, so they can compare as much as possible apples to apples.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much, Dylan. Any other questions? See, Councilor Caddy, go ahead.
For information, pardon my ignorance, is there an advantage to having a heritage designation, Adele, do you know, through you, Mayor?
Go ahead, Adele.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the advantage is that you're not losing the heritage in your municipality. If something's not on your inventory or it's not designated, there's no way of stopping any kind of demolition. So it's a way of protecting your heritage. So sorry if I kind of married the Deer Bay Hall and heritage, but they're two separate processes, and you're going down a path of doing what you would like to see the Deer Bay Hall in the future as, and any of the comments of the public. So the heritage component is something different that I could provide an information report if council so desires to have heritage protected within the municipality. So that's a separate process and wouldn't really tie into Deer Bay at this current time.
Go ahead, Councilor Franzen.
I would support Deputy Mayor Armstrong's recommendation, but I also would like to see a report from Adele about heritage. I think that would be helpful. There are several buildings within the municipality that should receive a heritage designation.
You making that a motion? Or you?
I was going to second Deputy Mayor Armstrong's suggestion.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
Well,
let me
try and articulate that we received the report from the Director of Recreation Facilities regarding Deer Bay, and further that we direct staff to solicit input from the public using a pre-established template regarding potential uses for the facility. And I think maybe a second motion would be.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay,
and I'll make a further motion after we voted on this one.
Any other conversation about that motion? I just have one little comment before we call for the vote, is that I do like the idea of the public consultation, because I think you'll get some feedback from a few people that are going to be positive for use on that building.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that in there, our Director of Facilities. And I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion now
Okay,
to that Adele, our staff, prepare a report on heritage designation within the municipality of Trent Lakes.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? I just have one thing I want to say about that is I watched a 150-plus-year-old log place get took over with a bulldozer. It was horrible. So, okay, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Just a
That
question.
motion is carried.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Prince.
Just a question, just for clarification, Councillor Franz, as far as your motion, can it be a little bit more detailed as far as asking staff? Are we asking staff to identify?
No, just prepare a report for council.
Okay.
Information. I think we're asking for
We're going to
information.
have for information, and we can deal with it further, whether a committee has to be set up or one of our committees that we currently have could deal with it.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Adele, for volunteering to put some of that in place.
Yep.
Okay, we can move on to 10.2.2 of our agenda, which is once again Dylan Kosh, our Director of Recreation and Facilities. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you have an information report regarding the Galway stove as follow-up from a previous resolution regarding replacement and repair options for the stove at the Galway Hall. For Council's information, as a part of the kitchen renovation at the Galway Hall, in the specifications for the request for proposal, there's the request for the replacement of the stove. The current stove is a bit of a health and safety hazard with the not really having a remote lighter, putting our volunteers in precarious situations that we would definitely prefer that stove is replaced. It's fairly original, I would say, to the building based on the condition of it. So staff's plan is that it is replaced with the renovation. That RFP, is closing at the end of the month. And hopefully within the month of April, we will have a contractor awarded to undertake that work.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Franklin.
Through the mayor, I do support the recommendation, but I think in the recommendation, we should put that the stove is a health and safety hazard, not that it's just included in the tender.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment? Was that a motion?
I'll make that as a
Make that a
motion.
motion. Okay, we have a motion on.
Okay.
Sorry, could I have clarification on the motion?
I just wanted it stated that it was a health and safety matter, continuing to use that stove, that it should be included in our tendering process for the kitchen on the Galway Community Center.
Through you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Just to clarify, Peter, it is, the tender is already underway and it is included in the tender. So there's not really any further action from the council required. It is the plan to replace it and there's budget allowed for it. So
I just wanted the Galway group aware that council's concern was that the stove was not safe to operate.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Franklin, go ahead. Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. Mayor Lemson, maybe I can try a different wording because I agree with
Sure.
you, Councillor Franz, and I think that should be
out
there. So maybe the motion could be that council receive the report from the Director of Recreation Facilities and support the recommendation to replace the Galway stove due to health and safety reasons.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'll second that.
Okay, I'm going to say, okay, thank you. So Deputy Mayor Armstrong made the motion. Councillor Franklin seconded the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to 10.3 of our agenda, which is fire and service, emergency service. We have nothing. And we can move on to 10.4, which is building and planning. 10.4.1, Sarah De La Marta, our junior planner, could you speak to this file? Please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant has requested a deferral this morning to a later meeting in order to go over the proposal with planning staff in greater detail. At this time, staff are requesting that council defers the MAF to a later meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah Delamarter. Anyone prepared to make that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? The motion to defer is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Sarah Delamarter, you can move on to 10.4.2 if you would so choose.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On today's agenda, there is a municipal appraisal form for consent files B-153 and 154-22 submitted by agent Carrie Stevenson on behalf of the property owners Ralph D. Harrison and Christopher W. Harrison. The subject property is located on a vacant lot between County Road 49 and White Valley Road. The aim of the application is to create 2 new vacant lots along White Valley Road. The application conforms to the official plan as the proposed low-density residential use for the severed lands is permitted in the rural designation. The applicants have submitted a natural heritage evaluation, which was subsequently peer-reviewed by the Kawartha Region Conservation Authority. The natural heritage evaluation was in support of the proposed application. There was a portion of the severed lot located on the corner of White Valley Road and the unopened municipal road allowance, which was identified as a recharge area. The results of the natural heritage evaluation were that, as long as a 5-meter setback was applied to the recharge area, development could occur on that particular lot. Neither severed lots conform to the comprehensive zoning bylaw B 2014-070, as they do not meet the requirements for the existing rural zone. Additionally, the recharge area and its subsequent 5-meter setback must be identified in the zoning. As a result, both the severed lots must be rezoned to the rural residential zone, with a special exception applied to the lot containing the recharge area. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the proposed severance with the following 5 conditions. 1, that $1,000 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the municipality for each severed lot. 2, that a rezoning of the severed parcels be undertaken to the satisfaction of the municipality. 3, that a consent agreement is to be entered into between the applicant and the municipality and registered on title at the applicant's expense, which would address the recommendations of the natural heritage evaluation. 4, that the applicant's solicitor provides an undertaking to the municipality of Trent Lakes that the consent application or the consent agreement, required in condition 7 be registered within 90 days of the issuance of the certificate. And 5, that if the reference plan confirms that any portion of the traveled road is located on the severed lot, the lands occupied by the traveled road, including additional land measuring 10 meters from the center line of the traveled road, be transferred to the municipality as a road dedication. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone have any comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I'm seeing none. I see Councillor Franzen, go ahead.
A motion to support, including the 5 conditions.
And can I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other comments? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. I think we move on to 10.4.3, which is again Sarah Delamarter, our junior planner. Can you speak to this file, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On today's agenda, there is a request for municipal comments regarding the purchase of Crown land on the parcel located along Mountain Lake. The subject property does not appear to have a municipal address, though the survey clearly illustrates a cottage is located on site. The only building in municipal records is a 26.29 square meter or 283 square foot shed that was constructed in 1955. Municipal records indicate that the property is 1.35 acres in size and has 200 feet of frontage along Mountain Lake. Staff are recommending that council supports the request to purchase the Crown land with the conditions that, should there be a remnant portion of shore road allowance, that the property owners purchase the shore road allowance, and further that the property owners obtain a legal municipal address from the municipality of Trent Lakes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions from council? I'm seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion? You see Councillor Cadigan.
I'll make a motion to support the request.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to 10.4.4 of our agenda, which is Adele Arbor, our planner. Go ahead, Adele.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, as a result of Bill 109 and Bill 23, which introduced various changes to the Planning Act, planning staff have been reviewing planning application processes in efforts to streamline approvals and provide more efficient processing. This report provides a status summary of municipal planning applications that we currently have in our department. Staff have been working to clear the COVID backlog of zoning bylaw amendment applications, with 5 applications remaining, in which we're waiting for additional information from the applicant in order to continue with the planning application process. With the new municipal complete application regulations in place as of January 2023, we have returned 7 of the 10 zoning bylaw amendment applications we have received. Based on council's discussion and desire to streamline the planning application processes, planning staff are retaining in-house the minor zoning bylaw amendment applications, with planning reports being prepared by the junior planner, reviewed and submitted to council under my signature and qualifications. The more complex applications will continue to be forwarded to the external planning consultant, Chris Jones. Sarah's first zoning bylaw amendment planning report for today's public meeting was a very well-written report, captured all the relevant policies, and the detailed graphics were helpful in explaining the proposed amendment. Along with this approach of in-house preparation planning reports, a review of the municipality's planning fees should be undertaken. So therefore, it's being recommended that council receive the report from the planner regarding the status of planning applications, and further that council direct staff to undertake a review of planning application fees and report back to council.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele Arbor. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry. Thanks, Adele, and appreciate staff looking at the process and the flows and the timelines. I think it's important, and I'm thrilled that we are just about in a current status. Comment only on council's direction to provide more in-house planning review and application process. Personally, that would not be my direction. I mean, I am looking for the most efficient and streamlined and effective way to manage applications. Sometimes that involves somebody to outsourcing it. Sometimes it involves in-house. So I just want to be clear. I don't know how the rest of council feels, but it would not be my direction to do more in-house review, but rather, you decide how it should be done, a combination of in and outsource, but overall, just make it more effective and more timely.
Good point. I think I would speak to that as well, as that I think is the idea of that would be the more streamlined you can be by dealing with some of the smaller issues in-house would be very streamlined. The major issues, yes, of course you do need help. Everybody does. So I think that's important.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
If I may just add, Marilyn, so I also wanted to compliment Sarah. I thought you did a terrific job on that report. So it's certainly no reflection on the quality of the work. It's just that, the direction is streamlining, not, you decide in-house, out-house, whatever makes the most sense.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what we've been doing in the planning and building department, is that we're looking at how we streamline the processes, and part of that hand in hand goes our planning review fees that we charge applicants. So we are going to streamline the process. You see, this was a simple zoning bylaw amendment as a result of a severance, and those things we could do in-house, and we don't have to wait months before we get that report to council. So as long as we have all the information for a complete application, everything's a go, and we're able to do that in-house.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Barbara Walden.
Through you, Mayor Lamb said, Another initiative, why we want to do a little bit more in-house for the simple ones, is it's an opportunity to provide Sarah to increase her education, writing reports and processing things and looking at the situation different ways. It's a growth opportunity for her, and planners are very hard to come by, so we want to keep her and we want to train her the best that we can.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I certainly agree with all the comments. I think it's great when we can do things in-house. I'm just wondering, is it the most cost-effective approach?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Franzen. Okay, anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Braber, go ahead.
Make a motion that council receive the report and that council direct staff to undertake a review of the planning application fees and report back to council with the mayor and deputy mayor's comments in mind.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Roll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, thank you very much. And we can move on to 10.4.5 of our agenda, which is Adele Arbor, our planner, once again.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the property owners of Unit 23 in Oak Orchard Plan a Condominium have applied to remove the holding provision on their lands. The property owners are intending to construct a single detached dwelling on a vacant lot and have satisfied all conditions related to the removal of the hold, which include the submission of an archaeological assessment, along with the ministry letter identifying that the assessment has been entered into the public register of archaeological reports. They have entered into a development agreement with the municipality, and they have provided documentation to confirm engagement with Curve Lake First Nation in preparation and finalization of the archaeological assessment. The notice of intention to pass an amending bylaw to remove the holding symbol was given in accordance with Section 36 of the Planning Act. Planning staff are supportive of the removal of the holding provision on Unit 23 and recommend that council receive the report and support the approval of the bylaw to remove the holding symbol for Unit 23, which is on today's council agenda for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele. Anyone have any questions, comments? This is another lot on in that subdivision that's getting through that process. It's been long and arduous for them and staff, and I appreciate all the efforts that's gone into that. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Braver.
I'll make a motion that council receive the report and the council support the approval of bylaw to remove the holding symbol.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Adele. That's good news for the people that own Lot 23. Okay, we can move on to 10.4.6, which is Barbara Waldron, our Director of Public Building and Planning, CBO. Go ahead, Barb.
Through you, Mayor Lambshead. This report is about short-term rentals. The report before you is to provide an update on the phasing process for the short-term rentals and steps moving forward. This report has been structured in 3 sections. The first section was what was to be completed in each phase. The second section was what we have completed as per phase 1 and 2. And step 3 was moving forward and what we're going to do and how we're going to do it to move forward with where we're going to go with short-term rentals. So council laid out a very clear path through the 3-year phasing, with year 3 being the year to possibly implement licensing. Licensing has become the norm for many municipalities for short-term rentals. Even though we received very few written complaints, I can tell you that the number of verbal complaints are many, and take staff time to discuss with the person calling and to do anything that we can do with regards to the complaint. Many are afraid to do a written complaint for fear of retaliation, but there is a very clear issue that is going on in reality based on the number of verbal complaints. Or often when we are on site doing an inspection, we hear about it through the neighborhood STR. Most complaints are about disrespect to the homeowners surrounding the short-term rental, and I have heard some awful behavior of the renters. Up until recently, when we received a clear opinion based on the recent OLT hearing, the complaints regarding ghost hotels were not being addressed, as the previous direction was that we could not control how a person uses or rents their property, being a residential property. With this clear direction and through the Ontario Land Tribunal decision, where definitions were provided distinguishing what all STRs is, what an STR is and what an STR is not, being a commercial property, we will be addressing the properties that are being advertised for a large number of people, being advertised on digital platforms, and they will be deemed to be a commercial use. The owner will need to address this non-compliance through a zoning bylaw and most likely an official plan amendment. Licensing offers the opportunity to determine where we will place the line in the sand of what a short-term rental is and where it crosses the line into commercial use. Safety and environmental are the items that we need to be addressed. I can tell you that we have identified, going through the STRs on the websites, we broke them into 3 categories. And the number of guests of 11 to 15, we have 3 of them that are 20, 25, and 25. And I can guarantee you the septic system is not designed to accommodate that many people. Sometimes when people push back on the municipality instituting regulations, they do not recognize that the regulations are also there to provide protection for them as owners. Through addressing complaints, both written and verbal, it is my opinion that in order to move forward with this solid plan towards licensing, that the reinstatement of the working group to assist me towards a solid and reasonable licensing program where a clear distinction between what an STR is and what a commercial operation is valid request. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara Waldman. Does council have any questions of Barb? Questions? Wow, that's a surprise that we have no question. Go ahead, Councillor.
I just have one comment. I certainly agree that we should reinstate the working group and move on with this process. And I'd like to make a recommendation that Deputy Mayor Carol Armstrong be on that committee. And I'd also recommend that John Braybrook be on that committee. John has a long history in enforcement, so I think he would be a valuable resource for the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much for those recommendations. Go ahead, Councillor Braybrook.
Through you, Mayor, just a comment. Although I do have a background in enforcement, that would not be my focus. Obviously, my focus would be, listening to the constituents on both sides and realizing that that the survey that was done prior to the 3 phases being implemented, there were a close, I would say 50-50 for licensing and another 50% against licensing. So me being part of the working group, it would be more of a collaboration than looking to enforce any sort of.
It wasn't a comment to say that you wouldn't be objective.
No, I just didn't want to.
Yes.
Just wanted to share that. So.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Question for Adele through you, Mayor Lamsad. Sorry, Barb.
I knew you were looking at me.
Yeah. My apologies.
Sometimes the virtual gallery can't see that, but yes, thank you.
Would we get more response complaints if we open up the written to emails, perhaps? Like, I know that there's a form you have to fill out currently.
Mm-hmm.
If I sent in just an email saying, hey, there's a place down the lake for me that's making a lot of noise, what can we do about this? Does that count as a verbal complaint or a written complaint? Or
yeah, we could take that as a written complaint, but I don't think people just don't want to put their name on anything. I remember being on a site, I was doing an inspection, and he was telling me about all the things that have been taking place next door. And I said, well, put a complaint in. Like, I need more complaints to come in to tell me if this is a valid issue that we need to deal with. And his response was, no, I can't do that because I know that I'll be retaliated. So I don't think it will make a difference in the number of written complaints come in, but it is, I would take that as a written complaint.
Thank you.
And I think something, when that working group, if it gets established, would look at that, I would hope so.
Okay.
It's making it easier for people to voice their opinions and about the neighboring properties. Thank you for that, bringing that to their attention, Joe. Okay. Do we have anybody any more comments? I'm seeing none. Would anyone prepare to make a motion? I see Councillor Braybrook.
I'll make a motion that council receive the STR update report and that council reestablishes the short-term rental working group consisting of from council, our deputy mayor Armstrong and myself on that working group, and that council appoint. Well, I guess I just said that, so it's just, yes.
That we have a motion. Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much to both members of council being on that group. Okay, we can move on to item 10.4.7 of our agenda, which is once again Barbara Waldron, our Director of Building and Planning, CBO. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Lamshead. So this report is about some purchases that we need to make for the department. There are two separate items. The first one is a printer scanner. And I've explained in my report that the reason I'm asking for a printer and a scanner, being one unit, is we are having issues on job sites that people are not keeping the approved plans on site because we can only print so big, and they basically just don't adhere to them. And we're finding a lot more deficiencies because they're not complying with notes I've made on the plan. So kind of going back to the old days where we hand out a set of approved plans, proper size, like a 24 by 36, which is what we see on the tables at the job sites. We think that that will assist the public and assist the builders and decrease the deficiencies. So that would be funded through the building reserve. It will not impact my budget at all. And that is what the building reserve is for, is to pay for items that are associated with the building department that may not have been considered at budget time. The second item is the purchase of 3 new tablets and heavy duty cases. This is in anticipation of our new building inspector starting next Monday, that we all have the most up-to-date tablets to operate out on site when doing inspections and to work with the cloud permit system.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Barb? Let's see, Councillor Braber, go ahead.
Just a quick question, Barb. Was there other quotes? Did you obtain other quotes for the printer scanner, or was that?
So the threshold for requiring 3 is 10,000, so it's well under it. I did an attempt to try to get other ones. The only other place that really would quote an item like this was Staples, and it was well over $10,000.
So that was a deal.
That was a deal.
That's a deal.
Thanks very much.
Okay, any other questions? See, Councillor Gaddy, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, this is just a comment that looks like this is a very simple solution to a pretty easy problem to fix. And I commend you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone prepared to make a motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
I will make a motion that we receive the report for information, that we approve the purchase of both the printer scanner and the 3 tablets with heavy duty cases. And we approve the use of the dollars from the building permit fee reserve funds.
Councillor Cadigan was the seconder there. Yes. Any other conversation? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barbara Wallman. Okay, we can move on to finance, which is 10.5 of our agenda, and we go 10.5.1, Chastity Robertson, Deputy Treasurer. Go ahead, Chastity. You can speak to this.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Municipal Act states that the treasurer shall each year provide to the Council of the Municipality an itemized statement on remuneration and expenses paid in the previous year to each member of council and each person appointed as member of a local board. The 2022 statement is attached for your information.
Okay, thank you very much, Chastity. Anyone have any questions? I'm seeing none. Would anyone be prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Braybrook.
Through you, Mayor, I make a motion that council receives a report.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to 10.5.2 of our agenda, which is Donna Taggart, our CIO Treasurer. Go ahead, Donna. You can speak to this item, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lambshead. Before you is the accounts payable for the month of February. You will note I'd like to thank Tasha. She's broken down the invoices paid under each of the categories for checks and EFT payments. So about 82% of our payments are through EFT, and we're trying to get as many people as possible on that method of payment. So just for your information for the month of February.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Donna? I'm seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Franzen.
Motion to receive this report.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Donna Taggart. Okay, we can move on to 10.6, which is administration. We have none. We can move on to 10.7, which is corporate services. And Ruth, would you like to speak to this file, our deputy clerk? Council expense.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead. This report brings forward council expenses for the month of February for council's consideration and approval. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? I'm seeing none. Make a motion. See Councillor Braybrook.
I make a motion that council receives a report.
And a little bit more, Randy.
Sorry. That received the report from the deputy clerk regarding council expenses for February 2023 and authorizes payment.
I have a motion. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? Seeing none. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Anne Marie. Okay, we can move on to 10.7.2 of our agenda, which is Jessie Clark, Director of Corporate Services. Clerk, can you speak to this file, please, Jessie?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead, staff were approached by a local Rogers TV representative who requested to begin adding recorded Trent Lakes Council meetings to their community channel, as well as their online website. There are many benefits for the municipality associated with this opportunity that are outlined in the report and include more openness, accountability, transparency, accessibility, as well as reaching their current subscriber pool and opportunities to promote local public events and notices. Staff are excited and supportive of this initiative and are seeking council's support for the broadcasting of council meetings on Rogers TV.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessie Clark. Anyone have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thanks very much. I just want to confirm, Jesse, that this is not anything exclusive. In other words, if Bell came to us or somebody else came to us, that we could also entertain that.
That is correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? I'm seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Franzen.
I'll make a motion to support.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, any conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Jessie Clark. Okay, we can move on now to item 11 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information. Anyone like to make a motion to receive them both, or would you like to speak about one or the other? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I'll make a motion that we receive them both.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? The Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to item 12 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information. I think we go to item 12.1, which is Courageous Canines asking for advertisement request. I don't know if anyone wanted to speak to that, but any questions of council? Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you, Mayor, I have a question. Does anybody vet who Courageous Canine is, or is this some anonymous letter we received?
I don't know if anyone can speak to that, but Donna, I don't know if you would have information on that.
So thank you, and through you, I believe our clerk might have a comment to make, but I can advise you that council did support this request in 2021 and 2022 in the same amount.
Did you want to speak to that, your clerk, Jesse Clark?
I can just further add that we also do receive copies of the publication containing our advertisement. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'm trying to can't find it on my thing here. Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I'll make a motion that we place an ad similar to last year.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. We can move on to 12.2 of our agenda, which is Kawartha Region Conservation Authority. Anyone want to speak about that or to that, or? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I would support the recommendation.
We have a motion to support the recommendation from Councillor Franzen. Do I have a seconder? The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. We can move on to 10.3 or 12.3 of our agenda, which is Peterborough County Health Center. Anybody want to speak about that or have any comments about that? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor. I spoke about this at the last meeting in terms of our county update. I think this is a great initiative to try and push for a community health center in Peterborough. So I'd like to make the motion to support this.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? All in favor? That motion is carried. That is a great initiative. I think it's something that's very much needed in our communities. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we can move on to 12.4 of our agenda, the Township of Moonbeam. Want to speak about that or discuss that or prepared to make a motion? The Councillor Franzen, go ahead.
Motion to receive.
Motion to receive. Do I have a seconder for that? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? Being none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 13 of our agenda, which is bylaws. I think we can speak to Jesse Clark or Kurt can speak to item 10.1, which is the bylaw memorandum.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamstead, there are two bylaws on today's agenda that didn't have a corresponding staff report or were part of a public meeting. The first is B 2023-024, a bylaw to appoint Jacob Hahn as a building inspector, bylaw enforcement officer, as well as a livestock valuer in anticipation of his March 27th start date. And B 2023-26 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of the shoreline road allowance agreement for Series 36.
Okay, thank you very much. We could do all of these in one motion, I think, if everyone is in agreement. If not, we can do them one at a time. I'm prepared to make a motion. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to approve those.
All of the bylaws on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion to approve all the bylaws. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. We'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. That's the first time we've actually got to do them all in one. Okay, we can move on to item number 14 of our agenda, business arising out of a previous meeting. Does anyone have any business? Seeing none. Okay, we can move on to any notices of motion. Seeing none. Move on to item number 16, which is information items. Seeing none, we can move on to, oh, go ahead, John Braber.
Sorry.
Councillor Braber.
Thank you.
Go ahead, information item.
Through you, Mayor, I have just a couple items for information regarding Lakehurst Hall. Tomorrow night is the final night for the inaugural Trent Lakes Youth Performing Arts Improv Program, which was a resounding success, and the kids are abuzz, anxiously anticipating the next program. A special thanks to Linda Cash and Janine Profeta from Peterborough Academy of Performing Arts, as well as Bruce Averill, who has worked tirelessly to ensure this program was a success, but most importantly, a huge thanks to the kids who participated. And my second item is after schools hockey skills at the Buckhorn Ice Pad. This program was held every Tuesday from January 31st to February 28th for kids from 6 to 10 years old and was sold out. A special thanks to instructor Chris Moore, as well as the volunteer Buckhorn Ice Pad maintenance crew, who worked tirelessly to ensure the ice quality was second to none. More often than not, the maintenance crew were tending to the rink into the wee hours of the morning, sometimes until 2 a.m. I can attest to the quality of the ice as I attended on numerous occasions to watch the hockey camp and public skates. Every time there was a green flag, I saw many skaters on the rink, which would vary from 6 to 20 skaters. It was a very good season and enjoyed by many residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the information item. Okay, we are going to, item number 17, we are going to go into closed session, 17.1 of the Ontario Municipal Act, section 2.239.2, to discuss personal information about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, municipal employees, acquisition or disposal of land, Dudney, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privileges, including communications necessary for that purpose, Dudney. Can I get a motion to go into closed? Councillor Cadigan for a mover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Braber for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are going to close. Thank you very much. We are at section 7.2 of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to rise from closed. Seeing Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? Carried. We have rose from closed. We move on to item 18 of our agenda, which is business arising out of the closed meeting. We have none. Section 18.1, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes of our last closed meeting. I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to adopt.
And Councillor Franzen, all in favor? They are adopted. We will move on to section 19 of our agenda, which is adoption of the confirming bylaw, which is 19.1. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong and Councillor Cadigan, all in favor? That motion is carried. We will move on to item number 20 of our agenda, which is adjournment. Would anyone like to adjourn? See Councillor Franzen and Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor?
Not in favor.
No, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for anyone in the gallery that attended. And we have a gallery and a virtual gallery. Thank you.